So, welcome everybody to this guided onboard session. Today with me is our user journey engineer, Jordan. Hi, Jordan.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Andreas. I'm the community manager of SpecFlow, and I will guide you today through this onboarded session. Some quick rules. This is a hands-on session. Rules, infos. So idea is I show you the stuff and you follow me along. Please use the Q&A tool for questions. You should have there somewhere a button down there. It makes for us easier to follow all the questions and have an overview, because we would like to answer your questions. There's also an upvoting feature. If you see something interesting, you can upvote it, then we will answer them earlier. If there is a question that is relevant to the current task I'm showing, Jordan will interrupt me and we'll try to answer them at once. For the rest of the questions, we have a dedicated Q&A section at the end. And talked a lot of questions. Before we start, we have one question to you, and that would be if you used SpecFlow before today. Please answer this. It also helps what I'm also talking. Good.
We already have one question, Andy, from Christoph. He's saying, will we get the slides again? And I guess the answer to that is the slides don't really have too much on them, right?
Yeah, so the next is let's go, and we jump directly into the guide. We will upload a recording, so the session is recorded, and the recording goes up on our YouTube channel and should be available on Friday there. The second part, can we skip making screenshots all the way? I'm not sure what you're meaning. Let's talk about this later. Can you ask a new question with more details, please?
I think what Christoph is suggesting is, can we get the slides? Because if not, they were going to be making screenshots of the slides as we were going through them.
That was it. Yeah. No, not that much slides here. Yeah, recording then on YouTube channel. Good, and we got in the meantime all poll is finished, and we are half nearly with new users or existing users. Good. I can also quickly share the results with you all. Good. Thank you for that, and let's jump into it. So what I have here is, I have here a Windows 10 virtual machine. Nothing more installed than Visual Studio. It's 2019. Somehow on the latest version. And yeah, let's get started to use SpecFlow. And the first thing we recommend, and you should do if you get started using SpecFlow, is to install our Visual Studio extension. And you can do this, get rid of this, via the extension wizard, extension dialog in Visual Studio. So extension managed. Go to online, you search for SpecFlow, select the SpecFlow for Visual Studio 2019 extension, press download. Visual Studio notifies that you need to restart again. Visual Studio, then this VSX installer is popping up. You say modify that the Visual Studio extension gets installed, and when this is finished. Takes always a little bit of time, especially on a VM. but should be finished any moment.
Famous last words.
Yeah, sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's slow. Done. So, let's start Visual Studio again. And in this case, yeah, start again. And let's say continue without code. And when we have a quick check, we have now on the installed here SpecFlow Visual Studio 2019 listed. Good. First steps is done. So how do we continue? So SpecFlow is all about testing applications. So let's start with creating our application or the subject under test that we tested later. As this is more concentrate on SpecFlow, we will test today on this very small class library, a calculator project, and for that we're creating now the class library. And as you see, one of the features for the Visual Studio extension is that we got some project templates for SpecFlow, and more to that later, but this is also an indicator that you have installed the extension. So let's create the class library. Let's call it SpecFlow calculator and say next. Let's say .NET Core 3.1. That's the current long-term support, that .NET Core version. SpecFlow supports, I'm using this here because it's the default and here, but doesn't mean that SpecFlow doesn't support new versions like .NET 5. So SpecFlow is supporting .NET Framework since 4.6.1. Then on .NET Core side, everything that's currently supported by Microsoft, which is .NET Core 2.1 and 3.1. Where, by the way, .NET Core 2.1 support runs out, I think, end of the month, if I remember correctly. And yeah, also .NET 5 support, and we are working on .NET 6 support. So we have our class library back here under the thing, and what we have here, copy code here to be a little bit quicker. I shared this code with you in the chat that you can copy and paste it also. So this is our subject under test, our calculator. It has two properties, the first number and the second number, and which also saves the state. And we have an add method which returns the result. It doesn't save the result at all. It's nothing implemented there at all. Yeah, and when we build this, everything is fine. So with that, we have now our subject under test, but yeah, it's not implemented, but we get to this later. We should also rename this file to make it nice. So as we have this now, we can now create our SpecFlow project. And for that, we click on the solution explorer, say add new project. And now we select the SpecFlow project. If you don't have it here on the list, you also can here search for it. And this time it was quick. Normally this project search is quite slow, but this time it goes quick. With the extension you get this project wizard, so we call this project SpecFlow calculator.specs. Let's hit create, and then we get asked again for which .NET framework we want to have. Let's stick to .NET Core 3.1 and which test framework we want to use. Today we are using our SpecFlow Plus Runner, but SpecFlow also supports XUnit, NUnit, MS Test. So what do you prefer? We also have here a little checkbox to also already add Fluent assertions. library to the project. I will show you, if you don't know it, I'll show it later. We're big fans in the team about this library, which makes it quite easy to write assert statements in your code. But yeah, I'll show it later. So yeah, we use the runner. Let's say create. And we got a complete setup SpecFlow project here. Let's build this, and during build, explain shortly what's happened here. So we have multiple folders here already created. Interesting stuff is in the features and steps folders for now. So in the features folder, we have our feature files in SpecFlow. You write your scenarios, you put them in feature files and use the language called Gherkin, which it's not really a programming language. It has some keywords, you see them here in blue. And like here, so we have this feature, always has a feature with a title, you have some description here, then you have the various scenarios, also have a title, and then you have given, when, then. And I also always compare them to, in unit testing, there are these 3 A's, arrange, act, assert. So you arrange everything, then you make your action where you get a result, and then you assert this result in the last part. And given, when, then is somehow similar. So given, and there's also and, is the arrange part here. So we are preparing our system. Then the when part is the action, the 2 numbers are added, and we make the assert in the then part, then the result should be 120. So let's close this. That's our scenario, and yeah, this is somehow near English. You can also use other languages like German, French, Portuguese. I think we're supporting about 20 languages or so here. So what you need and how your project is run, you can use. The second thing what is generated is this calculator step definitions, and this is the part where we have the code for automation. So where we define what is happening when, let's say, this step is executed. Yeah, that's created. We have also some dependency also created. So we have the Fluent assertions and SpecFlow plus runner here. So let's compile this, and after that we already see here in the test explorer our scenario of our project, and we have calculated our feature file and then our scenario, and let's see what's happening if we run them. Nothing. Okay. Yeah. That's part of the demo, so no nothing happened here wrong. So the reason why it looks like nothing is happening is because we're using the SpecFlow plus runner. All our stuff is free, but for some of our products, mainly the SpecFlow plus, or that all named SpecFlow plus, sorry, you need a SpecFlow account, and that's what's happening here. We need a SpecFlow account here, and to activate this on this machine, you have to go to output and switch here to test. And when you scroll a little bit out, you see here the big message that you should sign up for a free SpecFlow account. And yeah, then we can run it. This is only needed on your development machine. In your CI/CD pipeline, we detect most of them, and then this is not needed. This is only for when a user is executing them. If it's a build agent executed, then you don't need this registration. And we really try to make this quick so that you don't waste that much time. If you press Ctrl, you can click on this link, and then yeah, browser is opening. Then you have only, then you see immediately that the gray window is only a rendering problem on this virtual machine. You have the welcome page. We currently support sign up with a Microsoft account. You press that. I'm already, it's a corporate machine, so I'm already logged in with my Microsoft account. I select this, then I get my beloved two-factor authentication request.
And just while you're going through that, Andy, we've had another question from Santosh, and the question is,
Yeah.
is SpecFlow Plus Runner free forever?
Yes. Yes. What is free or was free will always stay free. So on functionality. So if you had a function, we don't suddenly put a feature into a paid wall. If you had this function, you will have a feature. We will have this feature. I don't promise that new features will be had behind something else than the SpecFlow account, but what was free will stay free. And yeah, finished, successful, activated. And as described here, I can now switch back to Visual Studio and run the scenarios again. One small info for you. If you're doing this for the first time, you have some steps more. First, we have to ask for some permissions. We can't ask for less permission. That's technically not possible via Microsoft account. So we have these things, and this is first name, last name, email address, and adds it more details in our privacy policy, but we technically can't ask for less permissions. We tried, but that's not possible. And then we need some additional information from you, like company name, country, or so, and you're done. You have these two steps you only have to do once, the first time to create the account. For all other steps, you jump there directly then to the last page that you can now use it. So let's switch back to Visual Studio, and when we run this again, we should now see a different result. Yes, it's yellow. So warning. So what's happening here? I open this, now it's bigger. So you have some output. You can ignore this. This is fixed in a future version. But this is the interesting stuff. And here is, we have our given, the first number is 50, and then we have pending. And pending means it's not implemented what should be behind this step, and all the following steps are skipped because there was an error before. So how do we get rid of this pending, and what do we need to do? So yeah, we need to do is implementing the step. And how we are doing this, one of the features is of the Visual Studio extension is also some navigation features. So what you can do is here in the steps, you can say go to definition, and you jump directly into your code for this step. And now a little bit more details. What is happening in the background here is, so a step is always, has to be always in a class with the binding attribute. It's a marker attribute that we only look in these attributes, these classes. And the methods are having also attributes here. And when the scenario is executed, we look, okay, this is a given step. So we look at all the given attributes. So these two, and when and then we ignore. And then we have the rest of the step. And we try to match this text against this. And this is a regular expression which gives us also the option to make parameters and wildcards like here. So the first number is 50 is matched with the first number is, and we get the parameter, this one, here already as a method parameter available. And also what SpecFlow can do is it's always also converting it. So we can, it's here is the string, but we can already access this in int, and SpecFlow is converting in the back to the right type. We don't have to manually convert that.
Andy, very quickly, we've got another question from Santosh.
Yeah.
Can a user sign up without providing company details?
The company name is, as far as I know, a required field. So you have to enter there something. I don't say more. Good. Let's implement this first step. So what is this pendings? Where does this come from? This comes from this scenario context.pending code. Let's remove this all. We don't need this yet, and start with our own implementation. And what we want to do is, given the first number, so we have our calculator class, we want to set this property. To do this first, we need to first make a reference between the projects that we can access the class. Good. And now we need somewhere an instance of this class. In our case here, we can do it in a very quick and dirty way. We can simply instantiate here a calculator and work with that. In your real application, I'm 100% sure this doesn't work for you. You need to set up the I container or something else, something bigger, or start web server. And so I said this is only for getting a feel how SpecFlow is used, and starting the application or starting everything up that you can automate against is often quite some work. And SpecFlow doesn't sadly help there. In our case, we have now this instance, and we can say calculator.first number equals assigned number. Let's build this, and let's run this test scenarios. So it's still yellow. Let's have a look. Now, given the first number, that's done, that's executed, but now we have the problem in the second step. Yes, didn't implement it. And that's how you do it. You go step by step and implemented it until you're finished and get another result than warning for your scenario. So let's finish that. So we say the second number, assign the second number. And now it's getting interesting again. Now we are on our when step. So we have this add method here on our calculator. So the problem is this add, as we remember, returns the result. It doesn't have a state. So we need to save somewhere the result of this function call to be able to make the assert then in the next step. And again, in this very reduced example, we can make here a field. Let's name it actual result, and we can assign this here. And now we can use this field in the second, in the then step. What I always do is I always rename this parameter to make it more clear what is the expected result from the scenario and what is the real result. And now, as we're writing assertions, now the Fluent assertion library comes into place, and let's add the using statement for that. And Fluent assertions add some extension methods to your type, and exactly this should extension method, which is the entry point. And with Fluent assertions, you can write your assertions, with a Fluent style API. So if you should be and stuff, and you have also a lot of other should. No, that's not what I wanted. You have be greater or equal, be in range, negative, and so on. And the thing why we are liking it, I like it, is, be honest, I'm always confused with the assert equal method. What from the test run, which is the one that's now actual, which is expected. I always get them confused, and then the error messages doesn't work. And with that, it's you get a nice API. This is very nice, readable. I don't have to think about it, and yeah, I can quicker consume the code. Let's build it, and it provides very nice error messages. Also, not only some value is different. So build was successful. Let's run it again, and it's red. Other results. Why it's red? Yeah, method or operation is not implemented. Yeah, we didn't implement our calculator. So let's do this. And it's easy, so quite first number plus second number, build, run, and green. And we have successful automated our first scenario. As you see here in the output, all the steps are done. Cool. So 25 minutes in, and first scenario was automated. But a lot of stuff was already prepared for us. So we had the scenario, we have most of the step codes. How does it look like if you're starting with a complete new scenario? And let's do this. So let's add a second scenario. We have already prepared something. And as we're on a calculator, let's add a new feature. Subtract two numbers. I share this also with you, that you can copy and paste it. So this gives me also the opportunity to talk a little bit of other behavior of step bindings and so. So first, you see, I hope you can see it. It's not that good from the colors. This when step, this is some purple. That's not black like the others. This is purple. What's happening here? So by default, all the steps are global, and with that we mean you define them once in a project, and they are for every scenario in every feature file. So, and you can reuse it. We are having here this given and first number and second number steps as we have here, and the same automation is executed for these in the other scenario, also if this would be in a different feature file. The reason for this is simply it's all about SpecFlow, and PDT is about shared understanding and make these scenarios understandable by everybody who is involved in the project. And if you have different behavior depending in which feature file you are, that's confusing. Nobody will remember that. So that's the reason why by default these step implementations are global. And I had it often in projects somewhere you have so many steps already defined that for new features, you don't need to write new ones. You can use the existing ones and combine them in a way that fits for the stuff, for the new features. But here in this case, we need to implement a new one. There are several ways that you can create some skeleton code where you can start one. You have here in the context menu, you can generate step definitions where a window opens to get this. Or you can, and that's the one that I often use the most, is you say go to definition or press F12. As it can navigate to somewhere, you get this pop-up if you want to copy the skeleton code into your clipboard. We say yes. Then you can switch to your step class and paste it in. And there it is. We have our method, we have our attributes with the regex, and you can start implementing it. And in our case, it would be, let's see, reuse the actual result again. That's calculator.subtract. Here there's the red quick list because the method doesn't exist. So control dot for the quick fix from Visual Studio. Let's create this method. The red squiggly is gone. Build it, and you also already see here our second scenario. When we run this, the second one should be red because, yes, because again not implemented. Let's do this. So in that case it's first number minus second number. Save, build, play. Green. And we have our second scenario automated. And yeah, you see if you have then a collection of scenario of steps, step definitions, you're getting quite fast. So this was all about the test automation part of SpecFlow and feature files and scenarios. And this is we were the whole time in the IDE. And what we noticed and learned over the years, SpecFlow is already 12 years old next month, so quite long here, is that not everybody in the team is familiar with working with IDEs and source control systems, and the feature files are for the whole team and on all stakeholders, so there is quite need to make them accessible for everybody. And for that, and during these days, there was a concept developed called living documentation, and we created the product SpecFlow plus living doc. And living documentation is these, when you write Gherkin scenarios, the idea is that you describe how your application is why it's behaving in that way, and have it more in an abstract ways that everybody, all stakeholders, user and so can understand it, so you have not that much technical details in that. And so it's like a documentation how your application behaves, and because it's executable, you are also always getting verified that this is still true, that the application behaves that way. And if you put this in a nice report or something, you get a living documentation. You have your documentation how the application behaves, and because of the test results, you have this living part. It's always validated. You don't have some Word files, some Markdown files which describes the stuff, but nobody can be sure that this is still the case, that nobody forgot to update the documentation with the latest feature change.
Andy, a few more questions if you don't mind. So we've got one from.
Yeah, have a quick look. Let's go in the Q&A section about that.
Okay.
About them.
There's a couple more as well. So do you want to leave them to the end or?
Yeah, leave them to the end.
Okay.
At least one of the things I think I will show in a moment.
Okay.
So, how do we create a living documentation? First, we need to install a small tool. Give me a moment. So, for doing that, right machine. Yes, you need a .NET tool, the Living Doc CLI tool. You can install this with this command. I share this also in chat with you. And this installs a command line tool now called Living Doc, what we will use now. If this is the first time you install a .NET tool, you need to restart your command line because some path variables are changed and so on. So close it, start a new one, and then it's good to go. So, tool is installed. We need to switch to the output directory of our test projects. So let's quickly get the path there. So get the path there. Let's switch to this one. I make this a little bit bigger. And now what we can do is we use this Living Doc command line tool. It has multiple parameters. I show you one how it's worked. We say test assembly. And this expects now that we have the path to the test assembly. So this is SpecFlow calculator.specs DLL. And because we want test execution results, we say -t and then test execution JSON. And when we execute this, we see a Living Doc HTML was generated. This is here. And that's the nice thing. So on the SpecFlow plus Living Doc generator, it generates one single HTML file. And this includes nearly everything. And when we open this, you have here on the left side again the same structure. Like in your Visual Studio, you have your feature file. You see here the test execution results. You see also some runtime. And yeah, you can disable this. You have some filtering here. And one thing, and I think that's for Sandesh an answer. So what you can do is with Living Doc, you can, somehow it's broken here, I have to check this, but you can have a feature description in Gherkin and also a scenario description, and Living Doc lets you put Markdown here. So you have links here, you can do formatting, and you can also include image. Image is not found. Okay, we need to fix this, but it's working normally. The demo codes are not with us. So what you can do if you need some images to describe something, you can do this with in the descriptions with Markdown. So you put this is another description. And here, so between the title and the first step, that's the scenario description, you can put it in Markdown images. I hope this answered the question. What we also have in Living Doc is some analytics stuff, so you have some charts here. You also see if some step definitions aren't used anymore, that you have some dead code. So that's there. And yeah, as I said, it's we have one HTML file, accept images, and you can share this in your team as you like, with send it per mail, upload it to a web server, send it in Teams, and Slack as you like how you operate. did this, that this should be very easy to be accessible for everybody, that they can have a look into it, how now the application should behave. Yeah, that's living doc for that part. Cool. So this whole example was about the calculator, so testing on a simple single business logic function. But we know sometimes this isn't possible because of, let's say, reasons, and you have to test more on like a black box, to more black box testing, so outside. And one thing what we said we will show you today, and I will here, is how you can combine SpecFlow with Selenium. Again, what we have here is a calculator. We are testing this small website. So we have our first number, our second number, then we press add, and after with some delay, we get the result here. And so how do we do this? So I can quickly run the tests here. We're using here in the background Selenium with Chrome, when I remember correctly. And in a moment, yeah, it's popping up. And you see it's automating. And done. So how does the automation code look like here? So first have a look at the feature file with the scenario. The first one you know, that was we did, and we added also a scenario outline to show how you can also, there's also scenario outlines in Gherkin, where you can parameterize your scenarios, but it's the same step. Interesting part is here the automation code. So one thing what we're using, what most of our users are using, is using the page object pattern. And what we did here is we had this calculator page object, and this abstracts us our website to make it more easily automate. When we have a look at the step definitions, they are quite short. So our given the first number is yeah, page object, enter first number, as it needs a string, Selenium needs a string for it, we convert it to string, but that's it. And given the second number, enter the second number, click add, and then the assert. So you have again quite a short step definitions, and all the magic UI automation stuff is wrapped in our page object. And page object is, yeah, can be easy, can be tricky, depends on your site structure. In this very use case, we try to, the thing with your automation, the challenging part, at least for me, is always to find the elements where you enter something, you press something, and for that you need the locators, and in our case we have it made us easy, and we do here simple by IDs. So we have here private properties, where to access the web elements we get our web driver from Selenium. That's the standard web driver from Selenium, as you probably know, and call the find element here. And then we have this enter first number method. We make first a clear everything content wise, and then do a send key. So standard Selenium APIs that if you used it, you're probably familiar with that. And yeah, this whole page object wraps our site here. Good. One thing else what is interesting is here is the browser driver. So what here in this class is I share with you the link to this code example that you can have a look at it afterwards. This class purpose is to start the web browser in Selenium if the first time you need it, and so we have here this current property which starts the Chrome driver and also closes the browser at the end of the scenario. So in this case we open the scenario, open the browser for every scenario. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, and that's again, it's a very reduced example, but it should give you an idea how you can combine SpecFlow with a tool like Selenium. Nice thing about SpecFlow is you are not limited to any automation library at all, as long as it's .NET code and can be executed by .NET. You can use it in SpecFlow. Here's Selenium. In the other example, it was plain C# to call the methods. You can use Playwright. You can use Appium. What you want. If it has a .NET API, you can use it. Yeah. I shared the link to the example with you. So if you want to have a deeper look into it, you have the chance. If you have if you have later then questions about it, please be free. Please ask them in our community forum. Yeah, and that was all I wanted to show you. And let's jump into the questions. I see there are a lot of some new ones in the meantime.
I was going to suggest, Andy, because Annie's asked about the bindings. Did we cover the SpecFlow hooks?
Not yet. It's a good point because we're using here something. So I only showed you the normal bindings for steps. So this is the step definition, step bindings. There's a second one called hooks, and these are events in the life cycle of a test run. So we have hooks for before the test run starts and afterwards for each feature file or for each scenario. And in this example here, we have a before scenario hook, which is called before every scenario, and what it makes sure that the application is reset. So it presses the reset button before, and be sure that we have a clean slate at the beginning of our scenarios. I often use this also to be sure that the database is cleaned up or some other state, that we are on a well-known state at the beginning of the scenario, that the rest of our test runs without big problems through. What else about bindings? I mentioned the type conversions. If you need, so that's happened automatically. You can also make custom argument transformations. These called step argument transformations. So if you want to have not only int and strings, you want, let's say, get directly an XML document back. That's also possible. And one thing what we forgot to mention is step definitions. I only showed you the simple parameter. What you have there. There are also two other parameters in Gherkin. One is a table, a data table. You can define this like here, so given the following books, and then you have your table. You can get this access to this table if you need to add a table parameter here. And the second example is missing. I have to talk with Ari. The other one is you have also multi-line strings. You have give me a moment to find it. Background step arguments there. You have so-called doc strings, that is multi-line strings. You can have also have multi-line strings as parameter. This is also then as normal string parameter in your methods. Yeah, that's the most important stuff about bindings that you should get started.
I added the link to the docs in the chat. So
cool.
So top voted question is, which tool works best with SpecFlow to automate WPF/desktop applications?
Best. So what I'm using for desktop automation, WPF automation, is the Windows app driver that works together with Appium to test desktop applications. That's the one that I'm using for it. I know it has some issues, but that's my go-to start. And that's the one that's left because Coded UI is dead.
I was going to say, do we have any examples for this one, Andy?
Yeah, sure. We have there not here. No, that's the other repo. We have for examples. We have now here on docs. We have a whole list with all our examples that we have, and there is the example for the Windows app driver. So let's share the whole example page with you. So all examples that we have are listed here, and jumps directly to it.
Cool. So there's another one here. Is the Gherkin editor for Microsoft Teams available?
No, it's not available.
Okay. Any comparison chart between SpecFlow Runner X unit and N unit? I'm not sure if they mean performance or.
We have some limited table here. We had it here somewhere. It's at the run product page. Here, small comparison table. General, there are some slight differences between on feature set and details, but we don't really prefer anyone. So if you have some features in SpecFlow, we try to make them work as much as possible with all of the forerunners, and also try to integrate as best as possible with them and their ecosystem and everything. There are some different likes. The runner has more parallel testing execution capabilities than the other three. Some have retries, some somehow retries, some not. So you see, there's no one runner that checks all stuff here. So it always depends what you use, what you need in your project, which you should choose.
So there's another question here. Can we use JSON file for data in feature files?
Soon. What we did not yet announce it big, but we added, there was in the past something called SpecFlow plus Excel, which you let get data from Excel files. This is now, we don't, it's still here, but we don't continue development on it. We started a new one, has simply some limitations, called SpecFlow External Data. It's open source, and yeah, it also supports not only Excel files, it supports also CSV files, and the plan is also to add there some JSON files, and this lets you, here's an example for CSV. You can define for the scenario the file where it gets its value, and then we have here product, and here the product column, and then the stuff is read this out, and you get not one scenario, but you get in this case 3 scenarios, or a scenario outline with 3 examples out of it. And you can also mix and match, so you have some stuff in the Gherkin and some in the file, and so on. So but not yet JSON. But as said, it's open source, so I'm happy to review any pull requests for adding JSON support to it.
Christoph has made a good point. He suggested that he cannot copy text from the chat, so I guess any code snippets he's having issues there, so maybe one to think about.
Okay, that's okay, good to know, because on our side we can copy the stuff out. Interesting that the chat behaves on viewer side differently on host side. Thanks for the feedback. I need to think about in the future how we do this.
We've got time for a couple more.
Yeah,
yep.
Sure.
Cool. So Gene is asking, how is it possible to refer to a repetitive scenario from a different feature file?
It's not possible. And that's on purpose, because because it's all about readability and simplicity. And the idea is you look only at one feature file, you look at one file, and you understand what's happening, how the stuff is behaving. If you need to then look into multiple feature files to understand it, then the simplicity and easy understandability is gone. And you make out of Gherkin a programming language. Gherkin is a programming language. There are no ifs, there are no loops, there are no methods there. It's description how your application behaves. So that's not there. If you have some thing that you always need to set up, you have the hooks, or if it has to be in Gherkin, but be careful with it. There's also the background attribute, background section. Where is it? Background that you can put on top before the first scenario, and this background is, you defined it only once, but this is executed for every scenario. So if you need to set up something for every scenario and wants to do this in Gherkin, you can use the background. But also be careful, because if your a feature file is long, you have to scroll always to get to the background and to understand the application. So be careful when using it.
I'm not sure if maybe it was meant regarding reusing steps from a different feature file, but if that is the case, then maybe send us a support message and we can get back to you.
Okay, but that's the steps are global, so it doesn't matter for which feature file. They are available for all feature files and all scenarios.
Okay, next question then is from Samir. How can we let driver to wait to appear element if we use some animation in dropdown? So waiting for elements basically.
Yeah, that's a Selenium question. How to do that? As far as I know, there are some waiting methods in Selenium. I think we use some of the stuff here. WebDriver await to do this stuff where you can check regular if the stuff is then finally there. But yeah, that's it, and the rest you have. That's the direction I can point to. There's so much depending on how your project is. There's no one answer that works for everybody. Have a look at the waiting APIs of Selenium.
And I guess maybe you can check for some class if it's hidden or something. Yeah. Application specific, I'd say. Cool. Next question, if we have time, Andy, is how to execute only failed tests in Cicd, since it doesn't show an option in Azure DevOps to rerun particular tests.
As far as I know, there is a checkbox. There is a parameter in the VS test task of Azure DevOps to rerun failed tests.
I think there is. And I think also, I guess from the SpecFlow Plus runner, you can configure it to rerun failed tests.
You have the runner can configure to rerun tests, but you can also should also be able to do this via the VS test task. I don't know the YAML parameter for it. It's
from
rerun failed tests.
From memory, I don't think they play nicely together if you set the same in the runner.
Yeah. Only use one of them.
Yeah. Good. So we have a question from Santosh. Do we need a different feature file if we want to test web, mobile, and API for the same scenario?
Okay, that's quite complicated because in all of these cases you probably have a different automation. So it's probably not only a separate feature file, it's perhaps a separate project. What you could do, but it's probably getting big, and then you could do it in one project, but you still have to duplicate the feature files. There's things like called tags. Tags in Gherkin. Do I have here one? Yeah, like here, and you can code. Yeah, you can check if a tag exists, and do then different automation stuff depending on that. But only because you have multiple tags, like when I say here mobile, and web and API, you don't get the scenario now 3 times. It's still one scenario which has all the 3 tags. So, but you need multiple instances of scenario. The SpecFlow Plus runner has a feature for that. It's called also targets, what makes it possible to duplicate or multiply your scenarios. And there's also an example for that. I think our Selenium didn't we? Multiple browsers against different environments. This example, let me quickly check. Yeah, so this example tests uses different browsers with different configurations, so you can do something like that. So you have targets for the different mobile web API, but you still have to do then in your automation code in your automation code needs the ifs to check on stuff, if it's what automation part you should now execute. So it gets quite complicated. Technically it's possible. The question is if it's complicated, how complicated it gets in your case, and are the scenarios really the same for all three use cases? So does it really behave the same way? Probably the API stuff behaves. The question, if you behaves the same way, or would you describe it the same way? Probably your mobile app works a little bit different than your web application, because there's screens, different screens, some little bit other arrangement or something like that. So yes, but and it's getting complicated, but absolutely doable. Question is if it's okay for this complexity.
Cool, and that was it. That was the last open question.
Cool. Then wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. We are already 10 minutes over. Thank you all for staying longer a little bit. As mentioned, this webinar gets uploaded afterwards on YouTube. Should be ready on Friday on our YouTube channel. You will get an email when it's there. And also, if you have questions now afterwards, please join our community forum, and there the community and the SpecFlow team is there to help you by solving your problems and questions how to use SpecFlow with your applications. And so we thank you for joining, and yeah, info's where you can reach out to us and also to me, and we hope we see us in the next one. Bye.
Hey guys.